what stood out for you, if you like, in the chat? Like, what are you taking away, your biggest number one takeaway from this week? What are you kind of most treasuring that you heard or that you got out of the talks?
To calibrate, yes, good one. To calibrate, yes, good one.
Am I hearing myself?
Yeah, sorry, I need to mute the live stream. Sorry, that was me. My bad.
No worries.
You're so good, Patricia, that we have to repeat, or the participant was so good. That was a good comment, so we had to hear it twice.
I was counting how many sessions I was on the week, and I'm like, maybe people are getting tired of hearing me.
How many?
20. Yeah.
Only? Seriously?
Right? You think that you've seen me more. You're probably appearing in your dreams already.
That's not a bad thing. Dreaming of Patricia is the start of healing. I put that as a scientific research. There you go.
Great. It could be questions, it could be topics that we could delve into just a bit more. Oh, thank you, Tracy. I did have that moment towards the end of the week where I'm like, was it a little bit too much of me this week? So thank you for that. You know, you've heard of Brené Brown, right? Her vulnerability talks, and she mentions that vulnerability hangover. And I was like, maybe it was that. So Annika shared that calibration was a concept that she's taking away from this week.
And we're on time, so I'll start the recording and do the beginning stuff. There we go. So hello, welcome everybody. This is the final Q&A session with Patricia. Where has this week gone? And we've got Patricia Aguirre. If you've just joined and you don't know who Patricia is, she's a therapist. She's a yoga teacher. She specializes in developmental trauma, and she integrates her knowledge and experience of 20 plus years on Eastern philosophies, applying trauma-sensitive methods to family constellations and attachment-based approaches. And she's, you know, yogis like myself aspire to be like her when we grow up. Or when we grow younger, whichever the case we may be. I'm Virginia. I'll be tech hosting on Zoom. Private message me with any technical questions or any details you need. Thank you. Seriously, thank you for attending these sessions and giving this gift to yourself. Thank you for getting the all access pass or the limited access pass. It's a good thing you've done. And if you are watching this on a replay, you still have time to get the all access pass and catch some more of the recordings, which will be on replays for the next few days. And you still have time to share this with a friend. If you liked these talks, if you found something of value in them, if you found some information or some sense of empowerment, think of one person you can share it with and go ahead and tell them. It's an act of kindness and service. And if you know them and they're in your life, they'll probably be better and bring more value to your life if they have access to this information as well. Let's be serious. So make sure you're resourced as ever. You may ask yourself, is this the kind thing to do right now? If not, do whatever the kindest thing is. If you want to take a walk, get some nutrition, get some movement and breathing. Before we start, and whilst I have them all here, can I quickly share about the course, Patricia? Is that all right?
Of course. Thank you.
So I just want to quickly let you know about the course we're offering on this, because you can take this work further. This week was kind of education, but we are offering an amazing leveled offers. We have 3. So we have Heal Your Trauma course, which is the essentials, and they're for everyone. So if you want to just move beyond trauma in your life and do better in your everyday life, And we've made this super accessible. And it says here on the sales page that there's 400 plus places available. That's not the case because people have been buying it. So there's less places available, but there is still time to get this one. And the price will double afterwards. And then there's a personal superpowers course. So if you want to go from okay to great, this is the one for you. There's more resources in it, there's more content, and 2 live Q&A sessions where you can really deepen into the work. And if you're a facilitator and you want to help other people access their superpowers and use them in their daily lives, then you've got the superpowers for facilitators to help yourself and your clients. This is it has limited spaces on it, just because we want to keep the groups small and engaged. There will be peer groups, there will be tutors. So this is really good value for what it offers. It offers lots and lots of bonuses and extra material for facilitators. Okay, and with that, I've pasted some links in the chat as well. And we are having a competition in the Facebook group. So for those of you who are here, you have access to the trauma Facebook group. You must be already on it. So you can paste your favorite session with a reason why it was your favorite and tag Mark and Patricia, and that will give you a chance to win a set of the recordings. So the winner will be chosen and announced on the group on Wednesday, and each session post tagged Mark and Patricia with a good reason to watch it counts as an entry. So after all this, I'll shut up because we want to hear from you, Patricia.
Thank you, Virginia. Thank you everyone for being here. I am excited and sad that this is our last Q&A. We've been having them all throughout the week and it's been so fast. It's incredible. I remember just the first day that I told you that I was gonna be here all week, and now it's Saturday already. So how is everything landing for you? How are you doing so far? For sure, there's been, even if you're just listening and not like fully immersing yourself, that which is fine. It's also a self-care practice to listen without like actually being fully there and processing everything immediately. But still it moves stuff inside, maybe through dreams, maybe insights, maybe a family gathering, and then you're like, oh wow, now I am noticed something that was always there and now I see it. So these are usual things that can show up. As we come to a close for this week, it's also recommended to be gentle before going back into regular life. So again, as with other sessions, please type your questions in the chat. I'll try to get through them, and we actually have a little bit of time after. If Virginia allows us to stay here a little bit longer, we can end the recording with on the hour, but we can stay a little bit if there are some other questions, as this is the last day. I would really like to get as many done as possible. So there's already one here in the chat. What are your top 3 tips to making yoga teaching more appropriate for developmental trauma? So I wouldn't say that there's something particularly designed for developmental trauma, because I would mostly say it's not the trauma, but the response that we have due to that trauma. So very generally, it can go 2 ways. So what I call overwhelm or overactivation, or collapse or underactivation, right? So let's say it's very common for people who grew up in homes where there was an alcoholic parent to develop this overactivation. And overactivation usually shows up as, let's say, anxiety, insomnia, or just this restless energy that will not let me go to sleep or ease or relax, because I have to be aware of those dangers that are lurking in the background and things that are like unpredictable. You know what I mean? Because this is like the father who, I don't know when he's gonna show up, and what he's gonna do when he comes under that influence. So this can be considered developmental trauma in some aspects. And one of the responses is this hyperactivation. Another response to developmental trauma, for example, a child that was, I'm gonna say, bullied, right, by the parents, by the family. How can you say these things? You're so stupid. How can you have listened better? So it's a constant undermining of their expression. And a common result of this is I don't speak, I don't say stuff, I don't do stuff, I don't show up, I don't sit in the spotlight. So this usually shows up as underactivation. Yeah, so those are two very different responses to developmental trauma, or trauma that happened constantly throughout the child's life. And it's important to notice this difference because when we receive these people in a yoga class, or actually any type of body work, or if we want to be like super precise, any type of work at all. For example, someone who has this hyperactivation, it's very hard to find them be comfortable immediately in a place where there's like this soothing music and like, hi, welcome. This is like a sacred space of calm. And they'll be like, I get to say when I'm calm, not you. Yeah. And when they feel that you're pushing them towards that, that's a sign of I'm supposed to not feel calm, because that's a trigger for me. I need to be alert. So if I want to cater to these types of needs, I have to be aware of that. It's very triggering for these people if I have like an immediate meditation, like coming like right from the street and have them sit in their mat and immediately into meditation, and they're like, because I'm wired in my regular activating speed. You were asking for like the tips, right? So I would say, first off, decide which one do you want to cater, because it's really hard to cater to both at the same time. The underactivating person will actually be much more comfortable in this very quiet place where the lights are dimmed, where there is very soft music, and you ease into the process with a lot of explanation. Here it could go either way. If they want like a teacher who's like very motherly and very, be careful with your neck, be careful with your elbow, be careful, and they feel this safety. Or that could also be a little triggering depending on their stories, right? So two things: cater to choose one. What I started doing, as I noticed that I cannot cater to everyone in the same class, is set a schedule. So this is an active class where we're going to be doing this, and then Tuesdays I have like the very soft restoration thing, and people know what they're coming into. So that allows them to choose, right? And choice is actually the second one. So I would go like, you could do this or that, right? So this, you can do this pose in a more activating pose, in a more activating stance, or you can choose to do that one. You could choose to take it to the like extra level, weird poses. I don't want to name them, but like the weird pretzel asanas, or you could stay here and practice this other thing. So you can give them the space to use that energy of the activation, or to go into more something that feeds more towards their ease states. I think that would be like the first things. So decide where you want to cater and let them know. And second, choice. And if just because you said 3, I would here add ask if you want to be touched, if you want to be adjusted, instead of assuming that the person wants to improve their position and their practice and start correcting them a lot. There's, yeah, those. I would go on if I don't consciously shut it. So I'm gonna keep it at 3. Yeah. everyday tips for coping, as well as lots to learn more about, also seeing more value in getting therapy. Yes. Yeah, thanks. Here comes my question. After watching the session about procrastination earlier, something happened and I'm wondering whether you have any thoughts. How can I protect myself from that inner voice, in my case, my mother's, that wants to label my no to something as procrastination? You're just running away is the line I get when something doesn't feel good to me. You won't believe the inner attack that happened when I decided to not leave out a session. So how can I manage to be good at myself and to distinguish between procrastination and just this second you mentioned self-care? That's a beautiful question. And this is something that I work with constantly with people in individual sessions. Because one of the key things to work is to start getting a sense of what my body feels when I am respecting my needs. I'm going to say that again. This is why we focus. I personally love the approach of embodiment. One thing is to understand, yes, I should be caring for myself. I should do what I want to do. Like you said, like I know what my choice is and I should go for that, but there's a body experience that is going against that. So the more I start practicing, and it can begin with very small doses of starting to respond to my actual need. And maybe it's triggering if it's something that's related to work, right? Maybe because you mentioned watching the sessions, or there are subjects that are more triggering than others. A very common example I say is notice when you're thirsty. Notice that that's a need from your body and something that you want for yourself. And be aware and do it mindfully when you actually get yourself up and walk towards the kitchen and get yourself a glass of water. This is, I really use this example a lot because it's not as triggering as other things. But when I do it mindfully and I am starting to connect to my body and saying, I am responding to what I choose for myself. Whether that's, I want to sleep right now, I am tired, this is my time to log off. I will take 5 minutes before answering to this message. Very small, minor things. Choose things that are not so triggering right now. And the idea is to start confirming to your body experience that you're able to listen to yourself and act upon yourself. That's a way to work with this through the body, right? Of course, the therapy perspective, and I also always like to add my other layer, I would definitely say this, but of course I do not know the specific case. In a general sense, I would work towards this, which would be doing the actual mother work would mean, in this case, would mean, what I find is that we often connect through negative outlets, and I'm quoting negative outlets, with our parents or caregivers when there is no other alternative to being connected to them. I will get into that. So if I did not have a stable connection, clear, authentic adult to child connection, that's a basic need. So if I don't have that, I will find the closest sense of that where I can sense that there is a parent. And it's usually, if that good one is not available, it's my mother complains about people being noisy. I will not be noisy. And I go into that dynamic of being nosy as a way to remain connected to my source of life, to my source of stability, to my source of love. That's why it's so difficult to get rid of that voice within, as you said, right? Because it's what is connecting me or creating that inner bond with a parent. So the process of that mother or that father wounding or whatever you want to call that therapy work would be to be able to establish a different type of connection so that I can more easily let go of the quote unquote negative one. Does that make sense? I condensed it really as much as I could, but that's one of the ways to deal with that inner voice when we cannot do it just out of will, right? Sometimes in this process of letting go of that, what I said, like the negative bond or the negative way of connecting to them, sometimes the step that's missing, if you've already done therapy or stuff like that around the work, is grieving the fact that I did not have the authentic relationship or the caring connection. That's sometimes a very common missing link. Some idea about the difference of working with trauma in different cultural socioeconomic settings. For example, in Belgium, we have a tendency to hide people with trauma, mental health issues away in psychiatric hospitals. This is often different in other countries, Peru and Bolivia. What is your experience? The difference of working with trauma. Though I think the question is about how should we approach the work, or just how it is done, like an overview of what's happening, like in the current state of things, or the approach of difference in culture. You can answer that so that I can get to that in a bit. I have recurring crazy chafing dreams. I used to be a chef. Oh, okay, get it. I used to be a chef and had toots because I got chronic pain and fibromyalgia after having my kids. What might help with this? I was thinking maybe I am enacting a trauma pattern of overactivity and working my dreams right. Could be. I wouldn't be able to say it right off the bat. I would need to explore a little bit further. What I can say from what I'm reading from this paragraph, if you are not a chef anymore and still having those dreams, it could well be, and this is something that happens generally in certain trauma situations, big T and small t, is that through dreams, we are still processing or digesting things that were not able to be digested during the time of the event. Yeah. So that's sort of like a general pointer of where this could be. Sometimes when we are like right in the middle of the storm, we fail to see some elements that need digestion, right? So I'm dealing with getting a project out, and I forgot to see how somebody was being mean to me. My body was feeling that, but my mind was not noticing that and not addressing that because that was minor. I mean, in priority-wise, but eventually that also needs to be digested. And usually after traumatic periods like this one, we get a chance to still process that because that's still in the digestive system, digestive trauma system. Make sense, Laura? Right. When you talk about that sort of inner division, I think of internal family systems work where you work with inner parts, including inner parts in conflict. Yeah, thank you, Ariel. Yeah. Thank you so much. I select always like calm activity to feel safe and cope with my child anxiety about not being good in practical activity. I was in therapy since 2 years to cope with kind of trauma, which I have with myself all the time. I am wondering whether any kind of embodiment course could be useful for me. I would check out Paul Linden's work. You can get a taster of, he's good at getting people out of this under under activation that I mentioned at the beginning. He's good at getting you into that next step of activation, and then he makes you inhabit that part, that that activation part, when you choose to, and choose is a very abstract word here, but when we go into this underactivation, we need to be able to embody the overactivation, or the ability to activate more than the overactivation, in order to complete the process of the trauma healing in general. So I would check out Paul Linden's work. He has some sessions on this week's summit, but you will also find some courses on the Embodiment Unlimited website that he directs. I had bullying in these jobs. Yeah, sounded something that could happen. If it is a child having the nightmares, is this a good sign that they are processing? I would still have an adult walk them through. Yeah, I would go get a sense of what's happening in the dreams. The dreams can tell you if the process, the natural process of digestion is activated, or if it's something is stuck. And an adult can come in and help the child at those little enzymes that can help them continue that digestion process. Question about procrastination. I think I avoid things because of fear of burnout, fear of overdoing things, fear of getting too eager, hyperarousal, perfectionism, feeling not good enough, afraid I'm not able to stop, don't have boundaries. Any thought of this? Yes, lots of stuff. If I were working with you on a one-on-one, I would ask you a bit about all of this. And I'm sort of sensing that they might be one thing. You can do this on your own. You can find someone you trust to work through this, so that they don't seem like a lot of things. Sometimes it's just one thing. But I would go and explore what's behind each one of those fears. What would it represent? There's a guy that's very known in trauma work, and his type of intervention, like his method, is asking, what's the worst that could happen? And then you answer, and then he goes, and what's the worst that could happen with that? And he keeps on going and keeps on going and keeps on going till you find. I find that this is not, actually, maybe he also recommends that, but also from my experience, this is not something that we can do on our own, even if it's as simple as asking these questions. But just to make it very clear, it's not to say that you need someone, and I don't want to trigger these self-reliance fears, but we are trying to access another part of your brain that is not doing that's not the one that's doing the logical things. I mentioned that survival responses are like in that vault in the brain. Yeah. So when we are asking through rational questions, it's hard to go from one to the other. And that's why we need a witness who can do that work for us. That's mainly the reason. Yeah, but I would go through that exploration and maybe see that there's a commonality between many of these fears, Helena. How do we choose a therapist and practice method that is best for us? Some mention internal family systems, which has a strong appeal to me, but I don't. Is that most appropriate because of interest alone? I would check with one of those therapists and try it out. Just like, hey, can I get a sample? I'm not sure if this is my thing. I've heard of it, but I want to make sure that this is something that I want to do. So can we test it out some way, right? So some using not an issue where I need to open up a lot, where I don't feel as exposed, and I can still measure and have that discernment activated. I would do that. And yeah, I do recommend like therapist tourism before before choosing one. Yeah, maybe 2 or 3 people both recommended or from methods that I hear are I definitely would recommend someone who is definitely trauma informed, even if it's not stuff about trauma. To me, trauma informed, and this is how and why I came into trauma, it's more about sensitivity and like respect for human nature. What I see is, to me, is really trauma informed, more like, oh, this awful thing that happened to you and you need extra care. I don't see it as that necessarily. Maybe the main difference I notice is that in Belgium, people can go to a hospital, disconnect from society, and be to some extent financially supported. This support is not available everywhere, and I have the impression that that creates a different options and where to aim the first steps when people start the strong feeling. Oh yes, for sure. Yeah. Simply welfare is totally different from most European or mainly Western European countries. Absolutely different. Social services, medical services are very, very different. Usually very, very raw. And the socio-economical factor comes into play big time. There are usually things that need to be taken in consideration. And I'll share with you just one short example. A close friend of mine worked with NGOs that were specifically wanting to work with children who were homeless or who did not have access to appropriate food. And they had like these places where they would feed the children. But I'm guessing for this type of project, children did have a home, or I'm not very sure. But the story is that she actually ran into one of the kids that were in their program, and she saw him eating food from the trash. So she walks up to him and she tells him, why are you eating this? You know, this is can be bad for you. It can make you sick. And why are you eating from here if you know that you can come to our place and have the meals that we offer? And he said, I cannot not eat with my friends. Yeah. So, yeah. That's as deep as these bonds go, and bonding is sometimes more important. Belonging is more important in these spaces than actually getting better. Yeah, I mean, lots talk about this, but I guess you get a sense, right? Virginia, would you mind? I know that we have to close this down, but Paul Linden's name, would you mind typing that, or maybe finding a link for his work? I started Ilan's course. Oh, that's Virginia. Was there a session on Eugene Gendel's focus felt sense work? Seems like great embodiment tool for clients to make their therapy sessions more effective. I'm not sure if there was. I think there might be. Virginia, I'm sorry, I don't have the schedule. Yes, being in movement. That's the name of Paul Linden's. Thank you, Yasina. Okay, should we close off the session? If you wanna stay just a bit longer, we can get a few more questions.
Sorry, Patricia, I know somebody asked me something and I heard you call my name, but I was typing manically in the chat.
Thank you.
What was the question?
We're good, thank you. Okay. Yeah, you can go ahead and wrap this up. And if you guys wanna stay, we can stay here for a few minutes.
It's okay, just a real quick share about the course again, for those of you who joined late or later. There's no such thing as late. You're always on time. The universe, there's no time, like Mark was saying this morning. But just to go over real quick, there are 3 options for you if you want to go deeper into this work. And the first, whoa, no, my screen is doing crazy stuff. There we go. My screen is traumatized. The first one is heal your trauma. And this is just to get you to okay functioning in your day-to-day life. And it's super accessible because we wanted everybody to get a chance to do this. And if you're in the global south and you're struggling and you have actual real financial issues, do mail us at support@embodimentunlimited.com. But do be fair with that. And then there's the personal superpowers course, if you want to go from good to great and really own your superpower. And that's the middle option. And if you're a facilitator and you want to help yourself and get your clients to access and use their superpowers, then we have this course with many more things in, and that may be for you if you're facilitating. So I just wanted to remind you of those again, since this is the last Q&A. And thank you all. Thank yourselves for coming. Thank yourselves for being here and giving yourselves the gift of this information, and hopefully taking some action, whatever it needs to be afterwards. Thank you, Patricia. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Virginia, for being such a good support during these week's Q&As. Thank you.
Okay. There is a recording